Welcome to the King's Podcast, the ultimate guide of film and television. Okay, this is my last episode. So that was not my last episode, but this is gonna be my last one. I'm disgusted with myself. Good people, we have made it to August. I don't know about you, but I feel like I've lived 800 lifetimes this year. And it's only August. There's just so much that's been happening. So, if you actually think about it, all the events that have been happening in the world, I don't know what timeline we're living in and what simulation we are in. I don't really like it, really. But if you, I just know that in the United States, not even, I believe it was, 3 weekends ago? Our former president, there was an attempted assassination on our former president. And then the following week, our current president said that he wasn't going to run again for a second term. There's just a lot that every single weekend. So when a Saturday comes, oh Lord, what's going to happen this weekend? And then you look overseas, and I have to say, give a big shout out to Bangladesh that managed to get their prime minister. I want to say the prime minister resigned just this morning. As I'm recording this podcast, their prime minister resigned this morning, and that was complete power of the people. It first started off as protests done by students, and I remember in the beginning when I was hearing all the conversations that was going on in Bangladesh, it kind of reminded me of the protests that took place in Sri Lanka a few years back, where they were able to also get their long-sitting president to resign. And so that kind of reminded me. And then many, many moons ago, it also happened in Brazil, where there was a lot of protests and the president managed to resign. But the current president of Brazil, I like him. I like him. Not to talk about politics so much. But yeah, there's just a lot that is going on in the world currently. A lot. There's some good stuff. I have really been enjoying the Olympics, gymnastics and swimming, just seeing these Olympians just be great. Simone Biles is a GOAT. I was really happy to see other women also on the podium being celebrated. Rebecca from Brazil. I got a little bit teary-eyed when she got her gold medal in the floor exercise. Well-deserved. She's definitely the rising star in the field of gymnastics. I would actually then go back to the United States, their gymnastic team, and say they also have rising stars among them, particularly the men. I really enjoyed the male gymnastic team for the U.S. If they did a movie, I would watch it. I will watch it in the heartbeat because I think it would be a great movie. I also think the swimming team would be also a great story to highlight in the Olympics. Katie Ledecky, I adore her. Husk. All of them. I really, really have been enjoying the Olympics. There have been some downside. There's a lot of unnecessary controversy that came forth in the opening ceremony. I enjoyed the opening ceremony. I kind of stopped watching because I thought it was towards the end of it. And I unfortunately missed the unmasking of Dionysus and the reenactment of the Feast of Dionysus, where everyone, for some reason, assumed that it was a reenactment of the Last Supper. But, it makes sense. I was Greek Dionysus, the Olympics first started in Athens. So it was hey, we're paying homage to Greek. But anyways, people were all up in their feelings. And still all of them feelings saying we should boycott the Olympics because they openly mock Christianity. They didn't. But, it was hard to kind of get towards people. And then this recently over the past week, there's been this unfair conversation that's been talked about. Iman Khalif, who is from Algeria. She's a boxer. and her opponent went down. The first match they played, her opponent went down within 46 seconds, and then with the storm that came, a gender controversy where people are claiming that Iman is a trans woman. Other people are saying Iman could be intersex. There's no proof that that is either the case. Either way, she has been faced with a lot of racism, transphobic remarks that have come her way. And I honestly hope that she wins. I hope she wins. I hope, you know what, not I hope, I say this, that girl's gonna get gold. Let her get gold. And let all these transphobic, racist, white women cheers, let them cry more and more and more. Let her win and let the Algerian anthem play strong in France. If you know anything about the history of Algeria and France, you would know that Algerian people have every right to, you know what, I was going to say something else, but Algerian people have suffered a great deal by the French. Gosh, I don't know why I'm talking about politics. Why am I talking about politics? I'm talking about movies. I'm here talking about history and politics. Lord have mercy. But they have. They have. And I will love just a sweet taste of victory. I hope to see more gold medals and more medals of Algerians winning on French soil. That is why I call sweet justice. As I was doing my final touches for this episode, like editing my final touches, the Olympics came to a close, and I'm so pleased that I feel like I manifested this into existence, but Iman won the gold. So yes, sweet victory. But also, she's in the process of suing people for online harassment. And I hope she goes after Joanne, considering Joanne has been really quiet lately. I feel that she is. And also Elon Musk. I hope she sues all of them for all the awful things they have said about her. I'm so excited. I hope she wins. Yeah. I actually stumbled, I should say, on this idea of this episode when there was kind of a fear back in May when the box office wasn't doing as well as projected. And there was all these articles that were coming forth and people were freaking out because films were bombing, underperforming. And they're like, where is the box office? Because usually the first weekend of May sets the precedent for how the summer is going to be. But this year, the first weekend did poorly. And the films that were coming out in May were bombing. They were crashing and burning, and it just wasn't a cute look. So I decided to just kind of do one about the state of the box office, talking about the flops, the hits, the surprises, and whether or not there really are stars anymore. Because there's always this conversation that for a long time, there's always this article, talking point about where are the Hollywood stars? Because for a long, long time, there was no one that kind of fit in the bill with being the new Tom Cruise, the new Tom Hanks, the new Julia Roberts, the new Sandra Bullock, the new Denzel Washington. There was none of those no one really fit in with that star power. There was a lot of people who may have sold magazine covers, but no one was coming necessarily to see their films. Because I think a lot of times some people were celebrities, they were movie stars. And a celebrity is very different than a movie star. Because a movie star puts butts in the seats. People would just see their name and said, I don't care what the movie's about, I'm going to go see that film because I like that actor. And sometimes it's even the director. The director is the star. I'm just going to see that film because it's directed by that person. But now, these days, there's not that many movie stars. And I think that sometimes some people are like premature. They say that person the movie star, and then they find out that person is just really popular online, but the general public don't really care about them. Don't really care about them. Because they're not going to make profit of $100 million film. And you're there like paying them $20 million where they can't even sell a film that costs over $100 million, another $100 to market, and then the film doesn't even make $50 million in the box office. Yeah, that's what's happening. And so I decided to be like, to compile data, look at the data, and just take a glance and look, because hey, this is what I do for fun. I just like looking at box office receipts and seeing how things do and sort of like projecting how things flow. So I decided to do that. When 2024 first began, Hollywood and the film industry in general was just coming off having 2 strikes that basically put the whole industry in standstill. The writer's strike and the actor's strike. So a lot of production just completely halted. TV shows like this got pushed back, got delayed. A lot of things that were planned on coming, some got canceled. And even for the actors weren't allowed to film things and they weren't allowed to promote. So by the time all the strikes came to a close, they just had a lot... there was a lot of gas in them. They tried to like make a point. And so for the films that were coming out this year, they put a lot in promoting them and hoping that they could bounce back from sort of the lack of star presence they had. And the first one they really had that force with in the beginning of this year was Dune. And Dune came around March. And Dune did exceptionally well. It was the biggest hit of the year for a few months this year. It grossed nearly $300 million in the U.S. box office. Specifically, it grossed $282 million and roughly over $700 million worldwide with a budget of $190 million. So that means Dune was a hit. Warner Brothers was happy. Other hits of the first quarter were Godzilla and Kong, The New Empire. That film grossed $196 million in the U.S. box office and estimated $567 million worldwide. Kung Fu Panda Part 4, which grossed $193.5 million in the U.S. box office and $545.8 million worldwide. And also Bob Marley, his biopic, One Love, which grossed $96.8 million and $179.3 million worldwide on a budget about $70 million. And then there were more of the moderate hits of the year, the first quarter, such as The Civil War, The Beekeeper, and Mean Girls. So by the time May started, Hollywood was pretty optimistic. The studios were. And so the first go-ahead, like what they were counting on to be the box office hit, was The Fall Guy. The Fall Guy. And this film costs about, the budget was like $140 million. It starred Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. And last summer, Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt were part of 2 extremely successful films, Ryan and Barbie and Emily Blunt in Oppenheimer. And so now you kind of have both of them. Both of them are, actors that are doing really well. But unfortunately for them, The Fall Guy bombed. It grossed less than $100 million in the U.S. alone. It right now sits at $92.9 million, which was not what they were expecting, and about $178 million worldwide. Considering just looking at the budget and definitely the cost of promotion, The Fall Guy was a misfire. And things unfortunately did not get better as the month went on. They had another misfire, huge misfire, with a prequel to Mad Max, Furiosa, part of the Mad Max saga. And this one did not star Charlize Theron. It has Chris Hemsworth is in it, and Anna Taylor-Joy was part of it. Anna Taylor-Joy is kind of... Let me just first make sure I'm actually saying her name right. So it's actually Anya Taylor-Joy, not Anna. So it's Anya Taylor-Joy. And to kind of go back to my original thought, she is like the new it girl of Hollywood. She's a fantastic actress. I love watching her perform. But I wouldn't call her a movie star, or at least someone to bring seats. Like, I feel as if Charlize is like a stronger name. And even with Chris Hemsworth has everything in his power to be sort of like a Hollywood star. He's very charismatic on screen, and he's incredibly talented. And so he kind of has like all the tools that used to be having that appeal, but for some reason it doesn't translate well outside of his amazing performance as Thor, which is unfortunate because I really do like Chris as the actor. And Furiosa bombed. It cost $168 million, and it was well received by critics, and the film did about $67 million in the US and $172 million worldwide. Did better internationally, but it was a bomb. And so people weren't happy with that. And there were other films that kind of started out very poorly, and so people were worried, like two films in mind, If and the Garfield movie. If is a film that was directed by John Krasinski, who's had quite some success as a director with his A Quiet Place. And it starred Ryan Reynolds, and it was, I believe, an original film premise. The film cost about $110 million, and so when it had an opening of about $33.7 million in the opening weekend, people were nervous, and people were calling it a bomb and whatever. But due to like a strong word of mouth, I feel like the film had like incredible legs. It spent about 7 weeks in the top 10 in the US box office, and it ended up grossing $111 million in the United States and about $186.7 million worldwide. I wouldn't call it like a box office hit, but I wouldn't call it a flop either. Like, I feel like it was a moderate hit, and I feel like there's some critics or, analysts are like labeling a flop. I honestly feel as it should be categorized as sort of like being a moderate hit because it had really strong legs. And it's not really an easy thing to be spending that much time in the top 10 and for it to kind of have like a smaller than anticipated opening weekend, but due to strong word of mouth, for it to gross over $100 million in the US is quite a strong feat. Even for the Garfield movie. The Garfield movie was really, really popular internationally. It had an opening weekend of $24 million in the US, and it actually did have strong legs from that opening, which was not really fantastic, but it had a bit of a smaller budget. It was like $60 million, and I believe Chris Pratt was voicing Garfield. I don't know how I feel about that, but he was, and it ended up grossing $91.8 million in the US, which I think was pretty good, pretty darsh good, and it grossed about like $250 million worldwide with like $150 international. It did really, really well, exceptionally well internationally. Garfield. And to tell you the truth, like, I didn't even know it was an American film at the time. I don't think I was paying attention because I think I was seeing a lot of promo, like, internationally, and I was seeing this, like, Garfield movie that was doing really well internationally because they came out to the international box office weeks before it was actually released in the US. I wasn't too sure. And fun fact is a film that's produced by Justin Baldoni. I want to say that's Baldoni. I want to say, hopefully, Craig is crossing saying his name right. Who has really built a great career for himself behind the scenes, being a director and a producer. And he is going to be, I'm going to talk later about his third feature. But what was the turning point? Because May was supposed to be the month that really sets the tone for how the summer is going to turn out. But I will say, besides the films that I feel like have long legs, I feel as if May did have a hit film in the mix of them. And that was The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Which is not, I think, box office wise, compared to other, like, franchises, it doesn't do, like, huge number out of the gates. But it always does pretty good. And I love the Planet of the Apes series. Which is interesting because I remember when I'm gonna like age myself by saying this, but I remember the time Mark Wahlberg, when his adaptation of Planet of the Apes came out, I hated that movie. I thought it was so terrible. So when I found out they were rebooting the series and it was going to star James Franco was going to be part of it, and one of my favorite actors. I see his name. What is his name? Why is his name escaping me? Andy Serkis was going to be playing the part of Caesar. I was like, okay, it piqued my interest, but everyone was saying how incredible it was. And I watched the first one, and I love the trilogy. It doesn't get talked about enough. It was like, you know how there's always that meme of when they talk about TV shows, how from the first season to the end of the season, like, it was like a perfect animation of the horse. Like, there was no misses at all. I have not seen The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I want to, because I love the Planet of the Apes series, and from what I've heard, people really seem to like it. So The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes grossed like $171 million within the US and $397.2 million worldwide. For some reason, I really had thought I had written down what the budget was, but I don't believe the budget was that humongous. So actually, I did a quick peek, and it cost about an estimate $165 million to make, but it did really well internationally. The film did $397.2 million worldwide. So plus the 171 US box office, altogether, that's nearly 400 million. So I classified Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes to being like a bright light in all their failure of May. And it was interesting enough that it was the film that had sort of the lesser star value names, sort of like the star build. It was compared to the other films where we're really banking on these sort of like names. Well, this was more of being banked on the franchise, and it did really well. I can classify it as being one of the bright lights, kind of what I claimed it to be like a hit. I mean, not Dune level, but it definitely, for me, felt like a hit. So we are leaving now, May. People are freaking out. Articles are just talking about how everything is failing. Everything is just there. Everyone is losing their minds and just being so sad because they can't believe how everything is flopping. And then what turned things around? Surprise, surprise, with a movie star. Will Smith. Bam, bam, bam. Say what you want to say about Will Smith. I'm still kind of upset that he did what he did at the Oscars, but no one can deny Will Smith is a movie star. Probably one of the last movie stars we've had, because he is still driving people to the cinemas. in numbers that a lot of these young cats aren't. And then also pairing up was Martin Lawrence, who's also like a comedic legend in his own right. And this is a franchise that's been going on for like 30 years now. I can't believe it. But anyways. So, yeah. And Bad Boys, Ride or Die, opened up with $56.5 million in the US and $105 million worldwide. It costs $100 million. See the number, $100 million. So just worldwide, just like the global box office, it had already broken even. But in the end, it really is about also, did you also with the promo as well. And as I'm recording this, Bad Boys grossed $193.2 million in the US box office, and worldwide, it swelled up to $398.7 million worldwide. Bad Boys Ride or Die was a hit, a smash. And once again, movie stars. Not just people who have famous names and you like know them and people are banking on them. We're talking about like old school movie stars. That's what happened with Bad Boys. And so people are smiling again, so excited. And June just continued. June continued on with having more hits. After Bad Boys, we also had A Quiet Place Day One. And this was a prequel to all the Quiet Place films. It was not a film that was directed by John Krasinski this time. The budget was really good, like $70 million. And the film starred Lupita Nyong'o and, oh my gosh, Joseph Quinn, who, a breakout star from Stranger Things, who I adore. I think he's such a great actor. And so, and I did actually watch A Quiet Place Day One, and I really enjoyed it. There was just something so sincere about it. It definitely was a lot more than just a simple horror movie. It was about kind of grief and the unlikely friendships, even when the world is ending. And it did really well. It opened with $52 million in the US and $97.7 million worldwide. And as I'm recording, it grossed $138.2 million in the US box office and $259.6 million worldwide. So, A Quiet Place Day One is a hit. And if you look at the filmography of Lupita, I would argue Lupita is a box office star. Because she has had some hits under her belt since winning an Oscar. And I feel like a lot of people should kind of study Lupita's career, like the roles she chose and everything. Because a lot of time people fumble the bag after they get their Oscars. They are just trying to chase after that glory again, and they don't really choose films with heart. And she, like, the films she has done, she has been really, really smart with everything that the path she's chosen. Being a part of the Star Wars franchise, The Jungle Book, doing Broadway, and then doing films like, and then, of course, Black Panther, and then there was Us, and now A Quiet Place. Lupita, she's it. I would argue that she could be classified as a movie star. Compared to some other people, I feel Lupita actually has success at the box office. I actually think she does. And so you had a pretty, and then by the time the month ended with an even bigger bang because the sequel to Inside Out 2 came out. And Inside Out which the first one I adored. Inside Out 2 was no small puppy. This was a Saint Bernard size puppy. Inside Out 2. It opened with $154.2 million in the US box office and $294.2 million worldwide. Considering it cost $200 million, yeah, it was successful. Another hit for Pixar. Score 1. And, as I'm recording, Inside Out 2 grossed over $633 million in the US box office and was the first film of the year to gross over $1 billion worldwide, currently sitting at $100.56 billion. What can you do? I am it. I mean, I feel a certain kind of way about it, just because, Disney is a great evil. But, it's Pixar, and Pixar, Pixar is not the biggest evil. What is going on outside? But I did see Inside Out 2, and I loved it. There was a lot of moments that I kind of cried a little bit, but just really felt embarrassment. I feel like embarrassment is with me all the time. I'm easily embarrassed, and because I get easily embarrassed, I cry. So embarrassment and sadness are just always with me all the time. There's a little fear. Oh, well, actually, yeah, fear is there too, and so is anger and anxiety. Joy every once in a while. But I kind of wonder what's like the main emotion that's leading me. Probably, yes, anxiety is there. Oh. Maybe embarrassment. I feel like embarrassment is the one that leads my ship. Embarrassment and fear. Embarrassment is there. I think, embarrassment for me is definitely the one that leads me. And so by the time July came through, Hollywood was bouncing back. The box office was doing well. You had both Bad Boys still doing figures, Inside Out just blowing things out of expectation, A Quiet Place Day 1. They were all doing really good. And then in July, we had Despicable Me 4, which opened with $75 million domestically. And as I'm recording, it grossed $324.6 million in the US box office and $765 million worldwide on a budget of about $100 million. So it's safe to say Despicable Me 4 is another success. And then eventually they also had Twisters, which is a sequel, or you can say also reboot, of the 90s classic Twister. I'm a little apprehensive of a lot of these reboots or sequels of classic 90s films and whatnot. I can say that I really love the original film, Twister. I'm a huge fan of Bill Paxton. I grew up on Bill Paxton. And I do kind of feel like the movie industry is definitely missing his grace. And also the TV industry as well, because Big Love was one of my favorite TV shows back in the day. And so you kind of have Twisters that basically stars sort of the rising stars of Hollywood currently. And I know a lot of people have been talking smack about Glen Powell, but I would actually say that Glen Powell, I hope I'm not being premature in saying this, but I think he could potentially be the new movie star. And I know there was one time when we had Chris Pratt, and that just crashed and burned once his divorce was finalized with Anna Faris. I think it's interesting, when his he stopped being the golden boy is kind of around the same time him and Anna Faris went kaboot. But I think he has had two really big hits back to back. Anyone But You did really well, and now he's the leading face of a huge, gigantic blockbuster. And I'm just talking about just in general, like for a film that grossed $155 million, for him to be a face of that's huge. From him just kind of being taking the back seat, like when he did Top Gun Maverick, and that was riding on the cocktails of Tom Cruise. That's funny. No pun intended. I just realized that. Anyways, 90s nerd. Anyways, and so this is really just kind of just really, I felt if this could have been a test for him, see whether or not, and I'm sure people were wondering, because there's always that like it guy, but sometimes the it guy doesn't really have bankability, and I think Glenn could be it. I know a lot of people are saying he came out of nowhere, which is not true because I've known about Glenn for a while. There was a little film called Sex Education that he was sort of like the best friend of the lead character. And I just remember just really loving his character in that film. And then around the same time I watched that film, then came Scream Queens. And I was like, oh gosh, that's that guy from Sex Education. I loved him in that movie. And wait, was it? Maybe it was called Sex Ed as opposed to Sex Education. I'll have to double check to make sure. And then he was also in Hidden Figures, and then eventually, the Top Gun Maverick. So he was kind of slowly building his way, and then, he was also in that romantic comedy that had Taye Diggs and Lucy Liu with the name Set It Up. That was a few years. So he's been doing stuff for a while. So I'm kind of really happy for him because I do like him as an actor. And so the film Twisters, and it of course also says another rising star from The Normal People, Daisy, which is my sister's favorite TV show. She's like watched it millions of times. And then Anthony Ramez is in the film as well. And so the opening weekend did about $81.2 million, which was exceptional. And it grossed $124.7 million. And it did really well in markets within the United States. I'm talking about within the United States. I don't really know about the breakdown in terms of geography internationally of how it was doing. But in the United States, it did really well in sort of like the Midwestern states. That's kind of where it was really excelling. And I think a lot of times, for a lot of these big budget films, I think they market them more into major cities as opposed to kind of focusing on like sort of like the smaller towns, And so that is kind of where Twisters kind of gain a lot of its money. In the Midwestern states. That's what they were saying. That's what the numbers were saying. The figure was saying that the area that was doing exceptionally well was in Midwestern towns. As of right now, Twisters has grossed $211.6 million in the US box office and $290.7 million worldwide. So interesting enough, Twisters is doing better domestically than it's doing internationally, but I think right now it's probably not playing that many markets overseas. That could be why there's that huge amount of the I guess discrepancy like between like the US and the international box office, or maybe they're just not that huge of the demand internationally. But I would just have to double check on that to see. Actually, now that I just double check, I think it's just a combination of two factors. One that is just outperforming here in the US, and another factor is still hasn't opened in some major markets internationally. And that's why. But Twisters is a hit. Twisters is a big hit for everyone involved. I want to say, no, Twisters is Universal. Universal Pictures is Twisters. Yeah, Twisters is Universal. And before the Juggernaut, I'm just doing all these funny puns. I unintentionally puns the Juggernaut of Deadpool and Wolverine came out. There was kind of a surprise hit that sparked out. One thing I love is when a film that is relatively low budget, not really necessarily independent, but just like a low budget film, like exceeds expectations and becomes like a runaway hit of the summer. That's one of my favorite things to see. Last summer it was, oh my gosh. Last summer it was The Sound of Hope. See, the film escaped my mind, Sound of Hope. And this summer, a completely different take is Long Lives. Two different audiences, but just in terms of the fact that no one really necessarily, when they were analyzing what films would be successful during the summer, necessarily pegged either of the films of being big hits of the summer. And Longlegs cost less than $10 million to make. And the opening weekend was $22.4 million. A lot of people are praising the marketing strategy, like the fact that the trailer made you intrigued without really giving you too much of the premise. You never really saw Nicolas Cage. I haven't seen it. I kind of want to see it because I'm a huge fan of horror films. And it is doing exceptionally well. Right now, as I'm recording this podcast, it's grossed about $69.2 million. Considering that it cost less than $10 million, that's fantastic. And right now it's sitting at $88 million worldwide. It most likely will gross over $100 million worldwide. That would be how I see it ending. It's which more is my heart. I love to see some of these smaller budget, low budget films doing really well, because a lot of times people put so much money on these films, and it's just a lot of times it's not about substance, or even style. It's just throwing money at the board and hoping just to make it back. It's just cheap. It feels cheap. It kind of cheapens the experience of filmmaking. And so I love kind of seeing these films do well. So as I was editing, I just realized that I said the wrong film. The film is Sound of Freedom, the one I was referring to that came out last summer. Sound of Freedom, not Sound of Hope. Sound of Hope came out this summer. Two completely different films just by the same studio. And speaking of sort of independent films, there's also been a lot of what you will call the specialty box office. We had First Kinds of Kindness, which did about $5 million in the US and $13.2 million internationally. There's currently Dee Dee right now is currently playing in about 200 theaters right now. So it's actually has expanded a little bit, and right now it's gross $1.2 million. Considering that it is playing in less than 500 theaters. On Friday, the Friday that I'm recording, this past weekend, the weekend I'm recording, it was already sitting in the top 10, because that's amazing. That means that the screens per average is doing really well, really strong. And there's also Sing Sing, which currently right now is playing in 39 theaters, and I think it's gradually expanding, and it's estimated to be like $694,000 on its way to grossing over $1 million. So those are sort of these more of independent films that are kind of like they are really doing well at the box office, and really people are excited for them. But there have been some misfires in July as well. There has been, like, in June, July, since, like, after things started turning around, there was Fly Me to the Moon, the romantic comedy that stars Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson. It costs $100 million to make, and right now it's only grossed $20 million in the US and $39.5 internationally. I mean, worldwide, I meant to say. So it's not going to make the 100 million at all. It is a misfire or flop, as people can say. There's also Horizon, another $100 million film that failed to gross even 30 million in the United States and 34 million worldwide. And I would argue both films were met with praise. Horizon, an American Saga, premiered again, and it was, I think to a standing ovation, for Kevin Costner's. So people were expecting it to be good. There was even supposed to be a part two, and because of how poorly Horizon did, the chapter one, they're not going to be releasing chapter two in cinema. I'm not too sure what the plan is. I don't know if it's going straight to streaming services on demand. I'm not too sure what the plan is, but they've actually removed it from the calendar because it did so poorly. And interesting for Fly Me to the Moon, I feel like Channing Tatum has had his hits as well, but I think it's also, I find it because Scarlett Johansson, apart from when she's kicking butt on the screen, and not just being Black Widow, but she also was in this film called Lucy that did really well. It grossed $100 million. So people like to see Scarlett Johansson kicking butt. And Scarlett, I think she's a really talented actress. And there's something about her that kind of feels reminiscent of old Hollywood a bit in the what we call us sort of cinema historians, the golden age of Hollywood. She has that kind of that element, that the aura around her. But apart from all that, she hasn't necessarily been able to be a box office draw. Apart, as I mentioned, that part when she's kicking butt, that's when people kind of like to see Scarlett Johansson. But I would think the Fly Me to the Moon would have done better than the numbers happened. But those were kind of the misfires that took place this summer. The later misfires, the ones in June and July. And then came Deadpool. And Deadpool came towards the very end of July. And no surprise to anyone, Deadpool broke records. Grossed over $211.4 million in the United States box office opening weekend, the highest grossing opening weekend for a rated R movie ever. And it grossed, I believe, $438 million worldwide. That's what it did. And it's a budget of about $100 million to promote. So you're looking at at least $300 million to break even. So if it did $438 million worldwide opening weekend, it's already hit. It can just crash and burn, and it already make the money worth. But it didn't. Deadpool looks like it has really, really strong legs. It's going towards its third weekend, and has so far grossed $455.8 million in the US and $940.3 million. So close to hitting $1 billion. It probably will hit $1 billion either this weekend or by the end of next week, before the next weekend pops up. It's going to cross over $1 billion. And is, of course, distributed by Disney and Fox Adventure, because we all know that Disney purchased Fox, so Fox is no more, unfortunately. I kind of miss 21st Century Fox. Does anyone miss that? I miss seeing that logo. It's so sad, particularly when I see stuff that I know is for Fox Searchlight Pictures, and it says Searchlight Pictures. It's what in the world is that? Disney, stop being so corrupt. Okay, let me stop talking before I disappear. Oh, gosh. That I kind of feel a certain kind of way that the biggest films of the year are both making Disney pockets richer. It's 2 and Deadpool Wolverine. But both of them are kind of franchises that I've enjoyed in the past and loved. I haven't seen Deadpool and Wolverine. I think I probably will see it we shall see. Just because, just in general, like, well, I am such an X-Men nerd. I have loved X-Men since I was a kid. I loved the cartoons, the comic books. And I remember when the first X-Men movie came out in the year 2000, I was like, that's the best movie I've ever seen. And then when the sequel came out, oh, my brain like erupted. Oh my gosh, my brain erupted. Oh gosh. Like, I was going to say, oh gosh, I see him, man. The one. Okay, hold on. Let me find out what his name is. So I just remember the scene where Colossus just he turned to steel. I just remember my brain just like shutting off and like just. I mean, that was like the coolest thing at the time I had ever seen. You know, this was, I think it was like before like the Return of the King. I'm talking about Lord of the Rings. So I'm just, it was that was a while back, but so like I bet now people are like, that's like not the greatest technology, but I'm telling you, when Colossus turned to steel in the mansion, I like lost it. So just so you know, I'm a humongous X-Men fan. That's like how my brain, like a lot of people love Avengers, and like I enjoy Avengers too, but for me it's the one I feel connected to have always been the X-Men. I just relate to them so much. Okay, they're just people who just never really fit into society, kind of outcast. People like make fun of them, or just they just don't necessarily know how to necessarily be human. I just love the X-Men. Like they speak to me in many ways that other comic book characters did. Like I never really related to Spider-Man or Superman or Batman. You know, I may have enjoyed stuff like particularly Smallville. Smallville was my TV show, and I love Batman's gadgets and particularly the villains. But in terms of the comic books that really spoke to me, I always felt X-Men was the ones I related to, and so Deadpool and Wolverine, you know, the team 1-2 punch of Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. So I'm just really excited. You're not when I say excited, but I kind of enjoy, and Deadpool is just, he's a hoot. Just in general, he is a hoot in general. So that it's been a a juggernaut hit of the summer. Alas, and it's just towards the end. And there has been, so right now, I haven't really classified these films as being hits because I kind of felt it was too soon to tell because they were just like opening weekend and I wasn't too sure how to classify them. And it really depends on how the second weekend is shaping. And that was the film Trap, M. Night Shyamalan's film, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, starring the lovely Josh Hartnett. I have had a crush on Josh Hartnett since I was 11, 11 years old. 11 and 12 years old. Yeah, I was like 11 and 12 years old since I've had a crush on Josh Hartnett. And it's just crazy to think about the fact that now he's old enough to start a movie where his daughter is about the same age I was when I first fell in love with him. I mean, like, I realize I'm old, but I feel like my brain kind of cracked a little bit when I saw the Trap trailer. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm old. I can't believe it. But he's still fine. Always is fine. No disrespect to his wife. But so it's like, so Trapped opened with about $15.4 million opening weekend. It has a budget of $30 million. Right now, as it's going into the second weekend, it's grossed about $24 million and $28.6 million worldwide. Right now, it's kind of not looking like it's going to be a hit, but I could be wrong. Maybe things will change as the time goes on. Maybe we'll do really well in different markets, but it doesn't seem that it's kind of catching so much attention. Like, I don't think it's going to be like this runaway hit after the opening weekend. I kind of don't really see it kind of making that much profit. So I don't think Trap will be a hit. of the summer, and it may just be a misfire, or maybe it'll be sort of like a wasteland film. The films that I'm like, they're not really a hit necessarily, but not necessarily a flop. And the films I categorized of these were Challengers and The Bike Riders. And the reason why I said it for both of those films because of due to budget. Like The Bike Riders, for instance, cost about $14 million to make, and it grossed about 35.4 worldwide. So it's like not so bad. But I wouldn't say, considering the people, the talent in it, Austin Butler, the new It Boy of Hollywood, and Tom Hardy, and then oh gosh, I see her face for right now. The name escaped me, but she was in my favorite girls TV show, My Mad Fat Diaries, and then of course Killing Eve. I see her face so clearly, and I kind of want to say it starts with a J. I don't know. I don't think her name is Janice. I don't think her name is Janice. Oh my gosh, why her name was escaping me. Escaping me so badly. But there's also this Challengers, which did the budget of $55 million, and its growth $50 million in the US and about 94.2 estimated worldwide. So this is like the wasteland film. So I feel Trap could fall into one of those. Her name was Jodie. Like, I knew it wasn't Janice. I don't know where I got Janice from. Is it like an actress that's named Janice? I don't know. But Jodie Kramer. I love her. And then for some reason, I tell you, my brain is not braining today. But also another film that is kind of, I was like, it's too soon to tell, is Harold and the Purple Crayon, which is based on a book. The opening weekend was not so great, but I'm not someone who always counts films out, even if they have like not the best opening weekend, because some films can bounce back up due to word of mouth. Case in point, The Greatest Showman. And that did $6 million opening weekend in the US and $9 million worldwide. Right now it's about $10.8 million domestically and $13.4 million worldwide. Yeah. Harold, I think Harold may actually end up being a misfire when the dust settles. But I feel like maybe Harold may actually do really well streaming. But right now, it has a lot to compete with. It's still competing with Despicable Me 4, and some people are still enjoying Inside Out as well. So it has some tough competition, and I also feel like maybe it wasn't marketed as well as it could have been. Like, I didn't see much, but maybe it was marketed out elsewhere in places I wasn't looking. But right now, the rest of August, I should say, is kind of looking, usually Hollywood doesn't really necessarily like to release films in August. Like, it's kind of like a dumping ground. Like, usually before August and September are dumping grounds where the films were like, it's not going to do well. But lately, things have been changing lately, where now people are kind of putting films where they feel could be promising. Case in point, It Ends With Us, which was originally scheduled to be released around Valentine's Day, which I don't know necessarily how I feel about a film that's centered around domestic violence and escaping domestic violence released on Valentine's Day. But anyways, I digress. And then it got pushed to June, and then now it's opening in the beginning of August. And the reason why it was pushed back because the film production got delayed due to both the writers and the actors strike. And so that makes sense for them to complete it. But interestingly enough, now it's turning out there seems to be drama that's surrounding It Ends With Us. And it seems to be more in line with Don't Worry, Darling kind of drama, which was like behind the scenes, where it seems like the actors didn't get along necessarily with the directors. But I'm not too sure how it is. It's based on a best-selling novel. It stars Blake Lively and is directed by Justin Baldoni, who had some successes with his other directing films. He did 5 Feet Apart and Clouds. And the budget was about $25 million, and opening day did about $24 million. So it's looking that it could potentially dethrone Deadpool and Wolverine this weekend. the fans, people who've seen the book, a lot of the fans of the book seem to really enjoy the film. Like right now, I think it's the audience review is like 94% on Rotten Tomatoes and like 7 out of 10 on IMDb. So it seems like people are resonating with it, enjoying it. I'm not too sure it's going to do well outside of the book audience. I don't necessarily see people, because I feel like some people will be like, if they don't know what it's about and how it's being promoted, they may be like, oh, wait, this is nothing like I was expecting. They may be like, well, I thought I came for something light and this is heavier than I anticipated it being. So I'm not too sure how it's going to be. But, we shall see. We shall see how it does in the next coming weeks. We shall see. Especially now, there seems to be a lot of controversy or rumors spilling or like drama. So we shall see how it does. Another film, other films coming is Cuckoo. That stars Hunter Schafer. Right now, I think the opening was like 1.3 million. The trailer looked really good to me. I may actually see it. Like, it looked terrifying. And I love horror movies. And also, there's Borderlines, which opened with about the opening day like 4 million, which the reviews have been like terrible. The fans seem to hate it, and the critics seem to hate it. It stars Cate Blanchett and Edgar Ramirez and Kevin Hart. Then there's also coming out opening, and then the rest of the month there's like the new adaptation of The Crow, which I think got a lot of backlash when the trailer came through. Blink Twice, which is the Zoe Kravitz directorial debut. That looked good. That seemed really interesting to me. It was like when I was watching the trailer, it reminded me a bit of The Glass Onion, but like meets like, I was gonna say it's like The Glass Onion meets Get Out, and maybe the little Don't Worry, Darling as well. I think that's kind of, at least I haven't seen Don't Worry, Darling, but I mean, just like sort of like the vibes from the trailer. That's how it seemed for Blink Twice. And there's also the Alien Romulus and Reagan, the biopic about America's former president and student star Dennis Quaid that comes at the end of this month. So those are like kind of the films that are coming out. So yeah, I feel like for the rest of the summer, Deadpool is going to continue to make some big bucks. I think Twisters is going to continue to do some numbers before like the summer wraps up. I think and the End With Us would be like the hit of of August. I think so, and I feel I'm not too sure how the rest of them may do. I don't think The Crow is going to do well at all. I could be wrong, but I don't see it doing well at all. Alien might do something, but I'm not too sure, to tell you the truth. I'm not too sure. It really just depends on how the film is. Like, if it gets critically acclaimed and if people see it and they like it and it gets like a strong word of mouth, it could do well. But I haven't necessarily seen much hype around the film. So that is kind of like a question mark in how I think it's going to do. Blink Twice, also another question mark. It looks very interesting and intriguing, but I'm not too sure if like Channing Tatum and then also Zoe Kravitz is going to bring people to see it, even though the trailer looked pretty good and some people seem intrigued by it. It may do sort of like the lower half of like the double digits, maybe like a 10 or 12 million open weekend. That's what I think. Who knows? It maybe can do better than that. Alien maybe just like 20 million plus. Maybe 18. Like, I feel like 18 to 22 million for Alien. I could be wrong. Blink Twice, maybe 10 to 12. That's why that the highest my projecting for 10 to 12. That is what I'm thinking. But yeah, so that is kind of like a little nerdy analysis of kind of the state of the box office, looking at it. It started off very, very, very badly. So many misses. But at the end, this just seemed to be pretty good. Pretty good, if I should say. Even, like, I think better than good. Like, exceptional. Excellent. Exquisite for the end. And what does that tell you at the end? I think it still says that I think there's, even though there's some of them, I think there still is a need for having sort of the household names, like the movie stars, people just driving people to the cinema, or just having really good stories as well, even if there's something that may be a franchise as well known, but just also executing those stories well in terms of what I'm hearing from like Deadpool, Wolverine, and also from what I've seen Inside too, it's just kind of doing the stories incredibly well, and so then people are going to go see it because of that. And sometimes it helps if there's already a built-in fan base, sort of like it ends with us as well, if it's like an original film, but it's based on a popular book. Yeah. But I feel like as if, even kind of like looking at this, besides, I feel like the only ones that really just seem like just kind of like groundbreaking or more original is definitely the films that are playing in the smaller, like the specialty box office, like Kindness, Diddy, Sing Sing, and then now it's all like films like Cuckoo and Blink Twice. It's not too much of sort of like that originality. A lot of it just seems like recycled stuff. Not necessarily garbage, but it's just, a lot of it just recycled. And I just honestly would like to see more, like, also like with Longlegs, like more originality out there. Something, and being really smart when it comes to the trailers and making people intrigued and being, smart with your marketing. Because sometimes things get a little tiring. You gotta take a gamble now, man. Gotta take a gamble. That's what I would like to see. So do you remember how when I started this episode initially, I was talking about how I'm always terrified whenever a weekend comes because there was something horrific happens or once in a lifetime experience. I've had so many once in a lifetime experience that's been happening like, every single day. Like I would like to live in a world where nothing historic happens, like historic moment happens, but that's what you're in. We're like in living history. And there, unfortunately, about a little over a week ago, I think it's almost close to 2 weeks ago now. 2 weeks ago, 3 little angels were killed at a Taylor Swift birthday party, I believe. And there was a lot of misinformation that spread about the perpetrator. And because of that, that led to widespread race riots within Great Britain, specifically in England and Northern Ireland. And my heart goes out to the parents who lost their children that day. I can't even begin to imagine how it felt to lose your child that way. And I'm also thinking about now all these riots are taking place and how scary it must be for my Black and brown brothers and sisters in Great Britain. So I'm thinking of you. And just as I was editing this podcast, there was a horrific plane crash that took place in Brazil. So my heart goes out to the lives that were lost and people who are grieving from that loss. And you never really know what to expect. Like, I'd never even imagined that I read a headline about Ukraine actually entering into Russia, and the world just seems like upside down at the moment. And so I feel as if it's so important to take care of what you can take care of your physical and mental health and spiritual health as well. And also try to be kind to other people because we don't know what everyone is going through. And so that's just my message, really, is just to take care of yourself and take care of all those around you. We live in a really scary times in a really scary world, but I feel as if we can try to make the world a better place for ourselves. Not just for ourselves, but for a life we will want our children and our grandchildren and our ancestors to be a part of. So, sorry to end this such a somber note, but that's just what crossed my mind when I was editing. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope that my little podcast made you a little bit happy. If you have enjoyed this episode, make sure that you like and subscribe. And if you really love it, go ahead and share it with anyone you think may enjoy it as well. And I've got to go because the Wrap Up music is coming out right now, and I didn't really have time to thank all the people I had to thank, but gotta go. God bless.